Hello, BookTube, and this is week 14, part 2 of the Future History Project. Now, the last two stories this week came from Foundation's Friends. Um, Carhunters of the Concrete Prairie by Robert Sheckley, and one that was actually quite out of order here, but I'll explain that. Strip Runner by Pamela Sargent. Carhunters of the Concrete Prairie by Robert Sheckley is weird. I'm not sure what drugs he was on when he thought this up, but it's entertaining if nothing else. Um, Not so sure how well it fits into the Future History Project, but it was entertaining, and sort of this is the kind of humor that's throughout this thing, where he crash lands on a planet. There was an error in the telemetry or something, so he crash lands, and the computer is sentient computer. It's like a robot, and he's sort of he's out exploring a little bit, and the computer tells him that there's other robots that are coming, or a robot there, and he's saying like there's one that's sort of nearby, and he goes, and the computer says, or he asks, how soon should I be able to see it? Calculating the two trajectories, calculating the two trajectories, and assuming there's no change in either of their directions and no other untoward event occurs, I would say, in the vague terms you prefer, that it ought to be quite soon. It turns out the planet that he sort of accidentally discovers is sort of the planet fall, the planet that a bunch of robots had sort of fled to, with probably some humans as well. Um, Now it was the planet that it came from. I'm just trying to find here the Destimona. It was out near the it was a planetoid or something out near the rim of the solar system, and it had some religious fanatics and everything. And then all of a sudden, they all disappeared, and there was sort of like a letter that was crunched up. All the technology was all taken, and it's sort of like they figure that they experimented with some of the robots, took away the three laws of robotics, so they could kill, and the robot sort of kidnapped the humans and disappeared. So there's been a big huge reward for finding the Destimona, sort of outlaw robots. So it looks like it's this planet, and he meets this one robot, Wayne, who is a car eater that he stalks and chases and kills sentient cars that are on the planet, Earth cars. It sort of harkens back to Sally, Isaac Asimov's story with the sentient cars. And they eat the cars, and it turns out that it is the planet, and they'd come there maybe 100 years ago or so, and there was a split with all sorts of robots, different kinds of robots, the car hunters living out sort of in the desert prairie area. There's other ones, microscopic ones that build houses, uh, but nobody lives in them. There's other sort of hyena type ones. There's other ones that are just feral robots, all sorts of things. And then there's ones that are sort of very cultivated in a robot city. They wear top hats, cravats. They produce, literature, art, and opera, and other classical music they go to in the evening. And he gets captured by the sort of house ones that sort of live underground, in a full house, and there seems to be possibly a human there with him, but he's not 100% sure she's human. And then one of the ones from Robot City, the ones that are cultivated ones, comes and rescues him, and they go into the furnace, into the fire, like, what's that poem, by Robert Service, that, they open up the thing and there's, I should have looked this up, but Ishab or and whatever, they're sitting in the fire, that's what it reminded me of. Anyway, sorry, that's a digression. Not a very good digression, but anyway, so they he goes there, and because it looks like the computer, they captured his spaceship, and the computer sort of gave them information, but then he sort of locked himself up, and then all of a sudden he gets broken out by spaceships that come from Earth, and they get him in a spaceship out into space, and they destroy the planet. They just blow it all up. And he's sort of a little angry at this because, like, there are these cultured, top hat, cravat wearing, cigar smoking, leather chair, robots that are very cultured anyway. So they say, well, no, that was the purpose of them finding out about this, and they had to destroy it because of the three laws of robotics and that. But it turns out the computer of his spaceship had sort of made copies of all the robots. I don't know if just all the robots on the planet. So he allowed it to get destroyed, and then the computer and ejects him in a life pod, and then goes into hyperspace somewhere else to start a new civilization and allow the robots to evolve on their own. And that's where it ends. It's very, very weird, especially the eating of cars and stuff like this. Very strange. But the other one, The Strip Runner, by Pamela Sargent, is very good. It's the best so far from this one. Now it's out of space. It's out of place. This should have been, because it originally was, I think, after Mirage, which was a short story of Elijah Bailey and Daniel Olva. And it's definitely after The Naked Sun, and because it's set in sort of the Caves of Steel era, the three millennia in the future, where there are robots, but they're all working sort of to supply the food and everything for the cities. And there's spacers that are sort of stopping Earth from or humans from leaving Earth. And Elijah Bailey is, he sort of starts a group that takes people outside, so prepare them for going off world, because everybody's sort of claustrophobic. Well, they're not claustrophobic, they're agoraphobic, that they need to be in enclosed spaces in order to feel good. And once they see the open space, they just psychologically can't really handle it. And it's a very good story, because it's about a 14-year-old girl. She's a strip runner, and that means like they have movable roads and walkways, and there's different speeds and stuff like this. And it actually started in like Caves of Steel, I think, because Elijah Bailey, when he was a kid, he was a strip runner. Like they would have races to get from point A to point B, and jump and interweave between the other pedestrians, and used fast lanes, but then back and forth, jumping onto different places, different levels, and so forth. And a dangerous thing, because they're going like 30-40 miles an hour, kilometers an hour, at top speed. But this Amy, who does this, she's 14, and she's the best so far, like that's doing this in the city of New York. And then an older legend comes, a woman that's now 21, comes and wants to speak to her, but she was the best at that time. And so Amy sort of, uh, says, let's have a race. And it doesn't end well because Amy, it's at a bad time, and she fumbles and falls, almost injures herself, but instead of injuring others, pedestrians, she allows herself to sort of lose the race, but then she gets kicked by, because this thing is not, it's called antisocial by the citizens. So they don't like it. So she gets, picked up by the police, and their parents, force this. But the woman that's taken her, um, um, that Shakira, her name is Shakira, the 21-year-old that used to be the best strip runner, wants her to join, um, herself and Elijah Bailey and others for going outside for preparation, for leaving the earth, potentially, once, if the spacers allow them. And it sounds like a basic story, but it gets really into the psychology of things. It's uh, like Amy realizes that like her mother's saying she's starting to do poor at math again, and she was really good, but then Amy sort of says, well, why bother? She's just going to be demoted and put to cooking and stuff like that, because she's not going to be allowed to do things in the society. She will be uh, you know relegated to be a wife and raising children. So why bother with all the work and stuff? And her mother says something that's really good, is, yeah, that's gonna probably be what happens, but do something like this so it gives you an interest later in life, because her mother was like so-called medievalist and still has an interest in life before the enclosed cities, before the caves of steel, in essence. And also too, that because the population of the earth has got so big, that they have to live within these very, very tight cities where they have, it's very controlled. It depends on your position in work and society, whether or not, like the size of place you have, or whether you have your own separate shower stall in the communal toilets, because you just have sort of like a small apartment with a room. And some of them, if you don't have the status level, you may just have you open the door and there's the bed, and that's it, that's all you got. And you eat communally and all this, and you get other sort of perquisites, that if it, as you go up the ladder, like her father has, allows, for the females to have their own, uh, um, shower stall, and allow them to have 4 meals a week in their own apartment rather than in the communal one, and other luxuries they get from this. And it's a very structured society, and it's sort of because they have to live this way because of food and space, and like this, and they have to live together. That like they're safe. There's really no crime, or very little crime, because people realize that they have to, you have to, in order for everybody to live, moderately well, or live equally well. They have to they have to get along. You have to live together. So you have to give up. Each person has to give up certain liberties in order. It's just like to have freedom. You have to give up certain liberties in order for everybody to have that freedom. and anybody who upsets that, it upsets the order, and it could mean, eventually that more people die because it'll have the haves and have-nots. Here it says a little gradation of that, but not a huge disparity, and it's something to look forward to work towards. That if you do work towards helping each other more, and that's sort of the way it is. It's more like a communal type attitude, and everybody sort of, they are brainwashed obviously to this, and also it helps with the agoraphobia that they don't want to go out, because if everybody started going out and staking a piece of land, then there wouldn't be enough resources and food or space for them to grow food for everybody. There just wouldn't be. So they have to live within this. So they have to give up certain things in order for the whole to survive. And it's an interesting conundrum, because obviously we're seeing that now on a smaller scale. Like people do have to give up in order to have freedom and to have certain things. They have to give up certain things in order to have, like for everybody to have it. You have to, like this. People say, oh, they want a free society. The only way to have a free society is you have to give up a certain things for everybody to have that free society. But people don't sort of realize that you have to give up things to have that free society. At least I think that's the way it is, because otherwise you'll have some that are free and some that aren't. So you have everybody at the same sort of level. And it's sort of, it's a level that they can live and everything like that, but it's still not nice. And the interesting thing is that in this story as well, it's sort of very patriarchal, because like women are relegated to the family, and to be the mother and the children, which is a little interesting here, because like Amy was thinking, well, if she doesn't decide to marry and she pursues her career, then she's going to be considered sort of antisocial. She won't have a partner. She'll be relegated to the single sort of areas of quadrants of the city, and she'll be considered, a bit antisocial. But it's an interesting thing, because if they did do that, and because generally, women who have careers sometimes may not have the family or the time for the family, or the urge to have a family as much as if they don't have the career. At least like within this context. But so you think that would actually be better. But again, it then creates a society of people who are thinking, well, it's only for myself. This is what I want, so therefore I will do this, and I will pursue my career with anything else. But if they create sort of a family atmosphere, and caring and stuff like that, like it is an artifice. Like it is clearly an artifice, but it's an artifice that is really needed in a situation where the population is like 1,000 times what it is now, or something like that, where the earth just cannot sustain the way it is now. It can only sustain if people are very densely packed into these places, and every inch of the earth otherwise is used to create the food and everything, like within this storyline. And it does make sense, and it does make sense sort of for the storyline, but also too how society actually works. Because if you look at hunter gatherers, they like people say, oh, well, when they became farming communities, they actually had, in cities, they had more time to do things. And they've actually found that's not true. Hunter and gatherer societies had more free time, if you want to look at it that way, than civilized or cities and sedentary people, farmers and everything like that. So they had to give up something in order to have this security of one place to live, and other people to help them if they're attacked, walls to help them that from attack. They had to give up something from the hunter and gatherer society in order to do that, but for the whole. So it's just an extrapolation of that. So it works. It works. I think anthropologically, sociologically, and that's why I think it's the best story. Like it doesn't add anything to the future history storyline at all, really, but it fits like a glove. It fits like a glove. And this is the first, I think, of all the stories that we've read outside of Isaac Asimov that fits like a glove. The Carhunters one was fun, and and then the other ones that were in here that we've read so far. There might be some others. I had read this one before. I know I didn't read the Carhunters one, but when I started reading the strip runner, I started remembering because when I last read Caves of Steel and Naked Sun, I sort of remembered a story about a young girl, doing this kind of thing when Elijah Bailey talks about this, but I could never remember where it was from. And even when I was making up the list for this, and I changed it from, and it's just for some reason it didn't click in my head. Strip Runner, that's where it was. So this story should actually go definitely after the Naked Sun, because they talk about Caves of Steel, and then there is a reference to but then she, the last line it says, she looked east and saw dawn brightening the Cave of Stars rather than Caves of Steel. But she talks about the Naked Sun coming up and stuff like this. It's definitely a story, and I'm not that familiar with Pamela Sargent. I'm definitely going to look her up and see what else she's read, because I really like this. She has taken the remit and did something well with it, rather than the others doing their own thing. She's done her own thing and expanded on it, but kept it within the remit and within the universe, and it works beautifully. So definitely so far, Strip Runner is the best one from here. Hopefully there might be some other ones that are Foundation era or Empire era that will work as well, but so far that's the best one. So next week, well, not next week because I'm doing these daily, but the next story is Bicentennial Man. So I'll do it. That's week 15. So I'll do a short a video on Bicentennial Man, and then I will do a video on Positronic Man, the novelization by Robert Silverberg, and sort of contrast the two. And at some point, I'm going to watch the film again with Robin Williams, and sort of talk about that too, possibly as a book to film, or just add that in somewhere along the line. But also too, I want to start reading a few things of Asimov has written about robots and other sort of material that's critical material about the robot books, and see how that goes, and if there's anything else that I can add to sort of glue this together a little more tightly. But it's great now, and it's sort of really great to sort of see. We had the 6 robots in time books, which they're lazy and stuff like this, but they are for kids. They're very young adults. They were what they were, but they didn't really add anything, and we've got more of these type of things coming up. But it's stories like this and other Asimov stories like the ones I just did, the previous ones, that sustain me throughout this, because this one here has a lot of depth to it within the universe. Like, that's what I'm saying. And you could go on, I think, for hours and talking about how societies can give up, you have to give up things in order to have a society, a freedoms of society, and have everybody to be fed, and everybody to have justice. You have to, there's things that have to be given up individually in order for everybody to share in these things. And anybody who doesn't think that, I think, are, I don't know. It just to me, it's very plain. It's a very simple thing that you have to give up things individually in order for everybody to prosper and do this. And it's not an easy thing because, and there's always going to be exceptions, and it always really takes an individual, like every so often, to make changes and stuff too. But it's a balance. It's a balance that everybody can't be an individual in a society and do their own thing, because otherwise there won't be a society. There won't be a collective growth. They'll be just fighting and just, at loggerheads. Like, that's what I think anyway. So without getting, into, too much politics or anything like that, but I think it's all apt for the way where the world is heading now, but this is fiction. But there's a lot of truth in fiction many times. And there's a lot of truth in science fiction. I'll leave it there, BookTube, and I'll see you next time.